listening is an art that requires attention over talent, spirit over ego, and others over self. This is by Dean Johnson. Now, the mechanism by which we get to know each other, understand each other, predict one another's behaviors and intentions is communication. Communication is essentially the foundation, fabric of our social existence. So communication is important because it forms an effective way to get our thoughts, our intentions, our opinions across to another person. Now, it is usually essentially a dance between what is spoken and what is not spoken, and everything that lies in between the words we utter. Now, all healthy relationships rely on clear communication, which includes the way we speak, and also the way we hear. We often tend to focus on what we want to say and miss the important part of communication, which is listening. Today, we're going to be understanding a little bit more about what listening is, what is effective listening, what is active listening, and what are some of the things we can do to become effective listeners. Now, most of us are very skillful in speaking. As a matter of fact, we are taught from childhood how to speak. Through school and college years, we are schooled as to how to speak, whether it be reading aloud to teachers, reading aloud to the class, to our peers, making presentations, preparing for debates, or even public speaking skills. All of that is taught. But we do not get much schooling on listening skills. So it's very important for us to be able to learn how to listen, because good listening skills is applicable in every aspect of our daily life. Slide number 2, please. Now, there are different definitions that are given by dictionary, and I'd like to go over that first. The Merriam-Webster dictionary defines listening as to hear something with thoughtful attention. The American Psychological Association defines listening as a technique in which a therapist listens to a client closely, asking questions as needed in order to fully understand the content of the message and the depth of the emotion. So a more modern and more useful definition could be being able to listen with intent to understand. Now, the Greek philosopher Epictetus said way back in 60 AD that we have been given 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we speak. So it appears as the concept of listening has been around for a long time. So it's important for us to be able to make that skill part of our daily living. So now, when we talk about the difference between hearing and listening, what is hearing and what is listening? Hearing is a physical ability, which we all know that sounds are picked up from the environment, and the nerves in the ears transmit it to the brain, and then the message is decoded or interpreted, and that is the physical ability. Now, listening actively, however, is a learned skill. One must choose to listen actively to others, which determines how well we connect to each other. So that leads us to what is effective listening. What are the tools and techniques? What are the benefits? What gets in the way? So that's what we're going to be learning in the next few slides. Slide number 3, please. Now, what is effective listening? To listen effectively means to listen with body and mind. It is a way of listening that helps us truly comprehend the speaker's message and the emotions behind it, genuinely connect to them, and make them feel heard. Now, something Swami has said about listening that Sister Lakshmi touched on is that listening, or shravanam, is a form of bhakti. Swami describes King Parikshit as a perfect example of attentive listening. As he listens to Sage Shukha when he is reciting the Bhagavatam, even as he's facing death or liberation. So it's important to understand why Swami wants us to hone our skills in effective listening. Now, we do that. We listen to, in spiritual practice, we listen to discourses, we listen to bhajans, we listen to sacred texts, and we try to put that into practice. We can use the same effort in learning to listen to one another effectively. So we often listen to respond. If we stop a few seconds or minutes to examine our own listening behaviors, we will see that we are more or less restless or impatient to respond. We are eager to put forth our opinions, our responses to any given conversation. And we kind of forget or miss the important part, which is listening to understand the other person speaking. When we do that, when we become more attentive, when we become better listeners, we become more patient, we catch ourselves from, catch our thoughts from wandering, and we suspend judgment. So that's a very important thing, because when we do listen to respond, we become more judgmental or become competitive. So it's very important to understand the difference. Now, listening requires effort and attention. To become a better listener, it is important to understand what are we supposed to be listening to. While words are very important part of communication, and sometimes it is what is not said that conveys more important messages. So mastering the ability to decipher what is called nonverbal messages or cues, or reading between the lines, can be very important in order to understand the message. The message is enhanced with all of the in-between cues if we learn to pick that up. Now, communication can be compared to a coin with two sides, both of which are very important: words that are said and words and what is not said. So everything in between is very important. Now, Swami has also talked about understanding, that understanding can be a very important part of communication. To quote Swami, first understanding and then adjustment. I think he has said that in many of his discourses. In one of his interviews with Mrs. Sandwise, when she asked him for tips on parenting, Baba said that talk to your children, listen to them, try to understand them. This is one of the important tips he gave in terms of parenting. Next slide, please. Now we come to types of listening. What are the different types of listening? They are broadly categorized under these headings. One is critical listening. What is critical listening? Which is trying to listen with attention and curiosity and trying to process the speaker's message and the emotions behind it. Reflective listening is listening which is repeating back the key elements of the message that you heard and make sure that you have the right message by reflecting back to the speaker. Now, this can be done either verbatim in the speaker's words, or it can be paraphrased. We'll be talking more about all of these different types of listening in the next slides. Empathic listening, which is listening with compassion. I missed the passive listening. Passive listening, which is in essence using silence, attentive silence, and allowing the speaker to complete the message without interruption. Now, empathic listening, which is listening with compassion, with kindness and respect, without judging. Now, empathy essentially means an ability to understand or sense another person's feeling and imagine what it is like to be in their position, to acknowledge someone else's feeling and creating a connection to that feeling. Now, it is an attempt to relate to someone at the feeling level. Now, this means you do not necessarily have to agree with the views or what is spoken by the speaker. What we are doing is trying to understand the feeling behind the message and being able to connect to that. So that's very important to understand what empathy is. It goes deeper. It goes deeper into the internal emotions. It is important not to confuse sympathy and empathy. Sympathy aims to mentally understand and identify with the person's struggles and with the person's emotions, whereas empathy, again, achieves a deeper, more internal emotional connection. So effective listening can be a healthy combination of all of these different types of listening. Next slide, please. So now, why should we become good listeners? What are the benefits? It helps you understand people better. It helps you make better decisions because you have more information to work with. It gives you a chance to consider all the different aspects of the message that is conveyed, the underlying issues, the emotions. You have a lot more to be able to understand and then craft your response to them. Now, it makes you, as a speaker, feel heard. This is an important fact. It makes you, speaker, feel heard because it shows that you care, it shows that you're listening, it shows that you want to hear and understand what they have to say. It makes them more confident and makes them open up more. It is helpful to keep in mind that it's not always easy to speak for most of us. It is very difficult to be able to share your innermost thoughts, your concerns, your worries, your grievances. You come in with a lot of trepidation. You come in with feeling vulnerable. You're afraid of being scrutinized, being judged, of what you might think of them. So they have a lot of these hesitations before they come before they speak. And your ability to be able to effectively listen, to be able to be respectful, caring, and show that you genuinely want to understand can help them immensely, can help them become more comfortable, be able to be comfortable enough to share more if it is necessary under the circumstance. Studies have shown that active listening and showing someone you care and you want to understand makes them trust you more. And when they trust you more, they're apt to cooperate. If there is a response, if there is a way that you have to work together, it makes them easier for them. Now, being a good listener broadens your perspective. It makes you a more approachable person. You are along the way picking up other opinions, other people's outlook that you have not known, that makes you a better person. It gives you more insight because everybody is different. We all come in with different thoughts, different perspectives in any given context. And the more people you know, the more you hear, the more you listen and try to understand, it gives you better insight. By showing you understand, it becomes easier also to address any misgivings, any misconceptions, any misunderstandings earlier before it turns into major conflicts. Now, many times you might find yourself in a position to have to make decisions that may not necessarily be in the speaker's favor. So your empathic listening allows you to craft more thoughtful responses and more creative feedback. So people tend to be less defensive and more willing to receive feedback in a positive way if you establish an open and very democratic kind of listening environment. It helps you build strong and more meaningful relationships. At work, you may be playing different roles as a team leader, as a supervisor, as a boss, as a teacher, as a lecturer. On all your different roles, when you have to deliver bad news, for instance, or make choices among the staff members, address grievances, address performance deficits, consistent relationship that you build on consistent good listening pattern makes it easier for you to implement, makes it easier for you to give feedback that may not necessarily, or give news that may not necessarily be welcome, but it makes people more prepared to receive any kind of feedback in a more positive way. Now, at home, speaking to our loved ones, it's very important to be in terms of learning effective skills, whether it be with our spouses, with elders in the family, if you have to come up with a joint family kind of decision, listening to everybody's opinions, trying to understand, even if the opinions are against you, trying to understand where it's coming from can be very helpful in terms of binding the family together. It can be very helpful in addressing children. I think all of us probably have heard this how many times, teenage children, Mom, you don't understand me. You're not listening to me. So I think that is, some of it might be a teenage angst, but it can also mean that they really have something to share. over the years, I think I'm working with children, I have come to the conclusion that it's a misconception that we as parents have all the answers or we always know better. I think it is very important to try and listen to our children. Sometimes they can, contribute important and very wisdom that we probably have never thought of. So it's important, again, for us to be able to listen to our children, to understand. In addition to that, what happens is that when you try to establish that kind of behavior at home, where everybody's opinions are heard, everybody is listened to, everybody feels listened to, then you have a better ability to implement any kind of discipline, whether it be or limits with children. It becomes more democratic and it's easier. It is easier because there are less shouting matches, there are less arguments, and you can become better at being able to come to a consensus. So it's very important to also address speaking skills at home. In addition to that, I think Swami also reminds us often, so we as mothers, as teachers, have to role model, to establish behaviors or demonstrate behaviors that can be emulated by children. So when you have good speaking and listening skills, and you encourage listening skills in the family, you practice it almost on a daily basis in everyday situations, then it gives children to learn from that and be able to carry that on to their peers or the other adults in their environment. So this goes back again to what Mrs. Sandwise, the advice that Mrs. Sandwise received from Swami, is that talk to your children and just try to understand them. So that becomes a very good modeling behavior. Now, Swami also has said that improving communication and interacting respectively with family improves not only the communication at home, but it teaches you to carry the same respect on to others, such as neighbors or the community, and it becomes a habit, in other words. Next slide, please. Now, techniques of effective listening. What are some of the ways that we can learn how to listen more effectively? The first one is called paraphrasing. I think we touched on this in the initial slides. Paraphrasing is repeating back what you heard or understood the speaker said, pulling on the more major points and presenting it back to them. Now, what happens when you do this? When you paraphrase or you reflect back to the speaker, you're doing a couple of things. One thing is that you're making sure that you understood the message correctly. This can be done, as I said, verbatim, or it can be done paraphrasing way. And it helps you clarify for your own self that you understood the message, that you didn't misread any parts of it. It also makes the speaker feel heard. The speaker understands that you're really attending, that you're really listening. You're able to pull the facts that the speaker has said. So that helps in both ways. And it helps also the speaker not only confirm that you have heard correctly. If there are parts of the message you misheard, then they get the opportunity to be able to correct that and make sure you have the right message. So that's the reason paraphrasing can be very important. Now, using nonverbal language. We touched on this too. That there are a lot of things that we convey, not only with our words, but also gestures or body language, so to speak. It's called paralanguage. Nonverbal language is any type of language that does not involve words. Now, as words are definitely powerful, they're building blocks of any communication, but what is not said is also a very important part. To pick up the nonverbal cues is to understand the nonverbal language. Nonverbal language usually includes your eye contact, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, your posture. All of those things can go into nonverbal messages. Now, when somebody is coming into the room, as you probably have experienced yourself, they're coming in, they're pacing, they're wringing hands, their hands are closed off. There's so many little messages that you get from that person must be very anxious, they must be worried about what's going on, so in a stressful situation. So the speaker before uttering a word has already conveyed a lot. So picking up those kinds of messages is very important. And your ability to be able to become more adept in picking nonverbal cues and body languages helps you understand the message better, understands the emotions that the speaker may be going through just by those nonverbal messages. In addition, it also helps you become more aware of your own body language as well and be able to modify it as the situation demands. Like when somebody is very emotional, you notice somebody is tearful, almost tearful, they're worried, they have no eye contact, they're looking down on the floor, they're wringing their hands, their jaws are clenched. So all of these things give you a message that they are distressed about something. So you adjust your own body language. So you're moving closer, you lean in to want to hear, you adjust your tone of voice, you adjust your eye contact, all of this to match what the situation demands. So it's helpful not only to read nonverbal cues of other people, it also helps you adjust your own to match that. So that is very important, to have good body language or be able to pick up body language. Now, emotional labeling is another technique that helps you to become a good listener. And what is that? This technique is helpful when the speaker appears to be having strong emotions or struggling to put their thoughts into words or their emotions into words. So you can be very helpful in offering some labels. For example, sounds like you were very stressed. Sounds like you felt sad. Sounds like you felt betrayed, disappointed. So if you give them these clue words, then it's helpful for them to be able to focus on that. Sometimes you might see that they are distracted because they don't know how to recognize their own feelings. So you're giving them helpful words can sometimes even help them focus on the emotions rather than displacing their feelings or emotions outside of themselves. So emotion labeling can be helpful in that sense. The next one is using silence. This is a very helpful skill, something that all of us should learn how to develop. When it comes to active listening, the use of silence can be helpful, important, and even crucial at times, for the simple fact that sometimes people just want to be heard. They want to vent. They're looking for a helpful hearing ears in order to vent. They're not really looking for responses. They're not looking for any advice. They just want to be heard. So that is very important to keep in mind, to provide that friendly environment, that friendly, attentive ear in order for them to be able to express themselves freely. And we also know that silence is not very easy for most of us. We all feel the urge to jump in, urge to fill in the gaps, urge to help, to respond. And all of this is done with good intentions. But it's important for us to be able to learn how to adjust and learn to practice that discomfort that we have with silence. Now, intentional silence is used in different ways in different contexts. One of the most common use of intentional silence is in therapeutic settings, where the therapist uses silence to encourage patients to open up, encourage them to not only express themselves, to share more. Public speakers use pauses or short silent periods of silence to emphasize parts of their message. So that is important there. Now, using silence in everyday conversations can be powerful as well. Not all conversations require a response. Sometimes silence is the best response you can provide in any given situation. Allowing brief pauses during conversations also can be an effective way to show that you're listening. It can help formulate considerate responses, as you said, using body language, just like smiling or just moving in or leaning in, nodding, or making minor vocalizations. All of those things can be done in silence to show that you're still there, that you're attentive, that you're there, and you want to hear more. So when we're silent, we give the other person or the speaker space to express themselves fully. We signal that we're genuinely interested in understanding their perspective. So silence can be very helpful. Now, Swami says, what does he say about silence? He often reminds us to practice silence because the voice of God is heard in the region of the heart when the tongue and the inner storm is stilled. In other words, when you're speaking less and you're just sitting in silence, and that can be an important listening practice as well. So next is redirecting. Redirecting is helpful at times when the speaker appears to be confused or go off topic or get derailed, so to speak, and it seems to be going into irrelevant details sometimes. So it's helpful for you to be able to gently bring the conversation or the topic back to the speaker to remind them. Now, this can often happen in groups, and for those sisters who run groups or are part of groups, probably have witnessed this when one sister is speaking and really expressing and becoming emotional and sharing whatever is going on in her life. Another sister in the group, anxious to console, to share, to respond, to share her own experiences, which is relevant to that situation, might inadvertently hijack that conversation and take it in a different direction. So as a group leader, or as a part of the group, by learning how to listen well, it gives you an ability to be able to gently and respectfully and bring the conversation back to the original speaker. So that is sometimes very helpful. It's redirecting. Mirroring. What is mirroring? Mirroring is essentially in difficult conversations to be helpful to reflect the same emotions as the speaker. Meaning, if the speaker is distressed, if the speaker seems very thoughtful, far off, or tearing up, so you modify your own body language to mirror that of the speaker, which is getting closer, making your voices soft, coming closer, gentle touch, things like that can help you mirror what the speaker is going through. And that can be very helpful and very consoling. Even if there is no response at the time, that kind of modification can be very helpful for the speaker. The next is validation. Validation can be important. Through active listening, we allow others to express their feelings and emotions and opinions without judgment. Validation is simply the process of genuinely hearing, seeing, and experiencing and witnessing another person's reality in the moment and allowing it to be just that. It is not the same as agreement. Effective validation is the ability to understand the speaker's emotions in the given context and be able to connect to that emotion. Validation can be used in everyday conversations by being present, by being attentive, by picking up verbal and nonverbal cues, by using feeling words and without any judgment. That can be validation. Now, mindfulness skills. I think we all know what mindfulness is. We use that every day in our spiritual practice. Mindfulness is the practice of intentionally remaining in the present moment. It helps you become more aware of your environment in terms of meditation, as we are taught how to observe our breathing and pay attention to that. In terms of meditation, we again also look at our breathing as well as the sensations in the body. In yoga, the same thing happens. We are directed to not only quieten our mind, also to turn our attention to the sensations in our body. In listening, it helps you give the speaker your full attention. The same thing can be applied to listening by being attentive, by being in the moment with the speaker. Now, it helps you tune in yourself, helps you adjust your own body language, your own responses to what is going on, to be in alignment with the speaker. Now, being more mindful lets you also acknowledge your own distractions. Sometimes you are distracted. It could be digital distraction. It could be the venue. It could be where you are. All of those things can be external distractors. At the same time, there can be some internal distractors where you have thoughts going on while someone is speaking. You're thinking of what am I going to do for dinner tonight? Guests are coming the weekend. How can I plan lunch? So there are so many things because there's so many things you juggle together. So it sometimes happens that those kinds of thoughts can interfere with our listening skills. But getting better at it, practicing, can make us more aware of those things and being able to filter those off and coming back to the present and being attentive to the speaker can be using mindful skills. Next slide, please. And the next slide is the roadblocks to effective listening. In essence, what gets in the way? What are the roadblocks? What are some of the things we need to be aware of when we are practicing to be good listeners? Now, there can be some natural biases that can influence your listening. It can be a tendency to favor your own pre-existing assumptions, pre-existing opinions, your own thoughts on a certain subject, which can interfere with how you hear. We become selective listeners. We tend to ignore information that contradicts what we think about it already. So we have our minds made up. And so we are not really paying attention to what the speaker has to say. Their opinions don't seem to matter because our own opinions interfere. That becomes a bias in itself. The other bias sometimes that can interfere with good listening is people bias or gender bias at times, but people bias most of the time. For example, if you're talking to someone you like, someone who is dear to you, everything they say and talk about, you might tend to see in a positive light. And on the other hand, if you're talking to someone who's not your really favorite person, then you tend to tune yourself off. You tend to hear everything they say in a more negative light. What this will do is will distract you. In essence, you're going to miss important cues that are given by this. You can distort the message at times. So you're becoming more presumptive in the sense you're disregarding or missing some of the facts that they're trying to express in their message. So that bias is something it's important to become aware of, to screen off when you're learning how to be good listeners. Even good listeners can sometimes present responses that are not so helpful. Now, this slide provides you with a list of the responses that we sometimes inadvertently or sometimes, many times with good intentions, our responses can fall into those categories. Like, for example, directing. Directing is telling people what to do, telling people what might be the right thing to do, what you would do. In essence, reflecting that and letting them know that they should be doing that. So it's important to refrain from providing any solutions or any directions. Next is warning. Warning is pointing out risks, the benefits, and the dangers of what they're thinking or what they're feeling in any given situation, warning them. Advising. I think it's very important, again, not to provide solutions or give any unsolicited advice. Even if it is with good intentions, you offer support, not advice in any given situation. Persuading, trying to argue, trying to convince them with logic and your logic. And so that would be important to refrain from as well. Moralizing, and we're telling people what is right, what is wrong, what they should be doing, or shouldn't be doing. Judging. Judging can take the form of blaming, shaming, or stereotyping. Probing. During difficult conversations, it becomes important to ask questions at times in order to understand better. But this should be done in a spirit, again, to understand better about the message that is being conveyed, not digging for information, not digging so as to gossip or so as to fact find. So it's very important to be able to use words, ask questions to learn, not to coerce or convince. The next one is distracting. Distracting is trying to draw people away from what they're feeling, away from in the moment what they're experiencing. Now, this again can be done with good intentions. When somebody we love and somebody we care about is in distress, is talking about their feelings, which is they're hurting. You can see that from their verbal and nonverbal cues. So your natural tendency is to change the subject, to draw them away from what they're feeling. So that is an important thing not to do, because that does not help. That keeps them or leaves them dissatisfied or unsatisfied, and they haven't really expressed their feelings, or it leaves them feeling that I should be feeling this way. It is wrong to feel this way. So it's important not to distract away and let them feel and be there, be present, and connect with them with that feeling. So that is very important to understand distraction. Now, distraction also can happen because of our own discomfort. If there is a subject that's being discussed in that conversation, which you are uncomfortable with, you have a tendency also to inadvertently distract the person from talking about it. So it's important also to work on your own feelings. If it's something that's bothering you, then it's important to be able to work on it. So that is distracting. Analyzing. Analyzing can be like offering a explanation for a certain issue, or reinterpretation of a certain context that the speaker may be talking about. For example, if the speaker is saying, if a friend comes and tells you that her boss was upset with her, and boss doesn't like her, boss is blaming her for this, and this, and then if you're saying, well, maybe that's not what you meant, maybe you didn't understand correctly, so you're offering a reinterpretation for what she is feeling. And that could all be true. That may be true in some circumstances. However, at that time, good listening skills demand that you offer support. You just listen without interpreting what the message means to you. Listen completely to the message and see how you can connect to the feelings of the hurt feelings that she's expressing in the moment. So that will be important about analyzing. So to counter biases, to counter and be able to be mindful of our responses, it is important to have a balanced perspective, listen fully, approach conversations with an open mind, and practice mindfulness. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, what is effective listening? What we learned today is effective listening is not just hearing, but listening with attention, with respect, and with empathy. Becoming better listeners is learning to be observant, picking up verbal and nonverbal cues. It is practicing mindfulness and refraining from assumptions and judgment. It is about learning to be more aware of yourself, of your own internal and external distractors. Becoming better listeners broadens your perspective, improves your ability to navigate relationships effectively, and improves your overall self-confidence. It is not about being a perfect listener. It is about striving to understand and to genuinely connect with each interaction, with each conversation. Now, we become richer in our life experiences and come closer to becoming effective listeners by practicing that every day in our lives and all aspects of our life. I would like to end with what Swami has said. It's very beautifully captures why we should be listening. When there is understanding and harmony in the family, peace will spread to the community, and from there to the nation, and there to the world. This is something he said back in 1991. So it's important to remember this as Swami's message when we are thinking about listening. So with that, I would like to express my reverential gratitude to Swami for giving me this opportunity and the words to share with all of you. I thank you all for being good listeners, and I would like to end here. And the end message, again, this message I like very much that I picked up, which again captures what we talked about today. Swami says, see with your eyes of love, hear with your ears of love, work with the hands of love, and feel with the warmth of love. Essentially, using all of Swami's teachings in listening is what makes you an effective listener. Thank you. Sai Ram, I would be happy to answer questions, but I also invite your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions about this that might be helpful for all of us to learn from. Sai Ram.
Thank you so much, Auntie, for sharing in depth with everyone. What an amazing session today that we learned a lot about the effective listening. So as you said, speaking and listening do go hand in hand, and that we do a lot of hearing, but the listening is the most important part, and how communication is very important and how it attributes towards healthy relationships. We also learned about benefits of listening, and you have given us real life examples like from home, workplace, society, and you gave us a lot of different techniques. One of the biggest takeaway for me is how silence helps. I mean, we actually paid more attention to the last 40 minutes of your explanations and everything. So it's time to put all these things into practice.
Thank you.
In what we do, and when we do things right will help us. As the quote goes, small steps will lead to big changes in life. If we start to take some baby steps, that would definitely steer us in the right direction. And I got a couple of questions so far. I think let me just start with the few I've received so far. One is that one sister wrote, at workplace, our job revolves around multitasking. How can we improve on listening? When a couple of people come to my desk to talk to me, I don't want to offend people because they come to my desk to share something, but I do need to focus on my work. How do I politely say things?
Yes, I think you acknowledge one of the things that might be helpful to the sister who's asking this question. It might be helpful again to pay attention to the message they're trying to give, but at the same time also letting them know this is important. I know it is important to you, and it's also important to me to hear you so that I can be of help and support. But at this time, I'm doing multiple things. I may not be as available as I need to be in order to listen to you. And because it is important, let's set up a time, maybe lunchtime at so-and-so, so you take 10 minutes with you, and I'll take 10 minutes with the other sister to be able to explain better, where I will be available and I'm not distracted, because it's very important that I talk to you about this. And you can say that and be able to respectfully and politely be able to give another venue for that same discussion.
Thank you, Auntie.
Does that help?
Hopefully, yes. One sister wrote, like, I'm very quick to react to different comments, and sometimes it's very hurtful to others, even though it wasn't my intention. How can I improve on that?
Yes, I think as we touched on that, we all want to be helpful. I don't think anybody tries to deliberately hurt anyone. I don't think that is our need, or even that is our wish to do that. But I think it's sometimes it's hard. We just jump in, as I talked about. It's the urge to respond that kind of takes over. So how do we practice? Sometimes this example is used for people who, and I don't mean it in that same context, when people say that I feel angry quickly and I escalate. So we teach children to be able to count to 10 or count to 20 or step back and get a better perspective before you respond. And that is practice, doesn't come right away. So count to 10 when somebody is speaking. Wait, give a pause. And those are intentional pauses, which helps you be able to collect yourself and give helpful responses rather than give reactionary responses. And that can be practiced. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. Every conversation that you have, even the normal ones at home, you start there, and then you keep doing that. And when you find that you're doing that, you will find yourselves that you're taking time. You're taking time to reflect on the message before you give your response.
Yeah, reflect versus react. So, thank you, Auntie. Another question goes, silence bears different meaning in different cultures. How do you effectively use this technique to convey your message?
I think that I would need more information on that. When you say different cultures, do you mean in some cultures they don't use silence? Is that what is meant by
Maybe I will have the sister probably expand
more
more on that, even though it touched a lot about silence today, because this question came ahead of when you spoke. So I'll go to the next one. How can I listen to a child who stammers without taking too much class time, while also ensuring the child doesn't feel left out?
Yes, I think that's a very important question, a very helpful question to address, because a lot of children do. Now, the stammering itself can come because of anxiety, and they're still learning, and they're in the process of developing to speak better, and that stammer usually goes away. But the more important thing is the confidence. Now, how do you provide confidence to the child who hesitates to speak or stammers during speaking? So, in anticipation, since you know that your child has that difficulty, making it as easy as possible. If the child is addressing when you are ready to leave, most children do that. When you're ready to go out the door, that's when they have their needs. Oh, I needed a poster board for today. I needed to get my project done today. Oh my God, Mom, I don't have that. So you hear all of that in the last moment. That's a common thing. So if it is a situation like that, then you say, okay, right now we're going to school, and then we don't have no time. Let's see, as soon as we come back today, we have a little snack when you come back from school, and I'm going to give you 15 minutes. At that time, we can sit and talk about it. So right now, I think it is important to you, and I want to listen, but we are walking out the door. This is a very tight time, and I may not be able to be as attentive to you as you want me to be. So therefore, it's very important. So to present it as a way of the time issue, and that you want to give more time for the child to finish the message. So set up a time to talk. And in some cases, in these children who hesitate or need more self-confidence, sometimes it's helpful to have in every family talking time. So during that time, you do nothing else, like a Friday night when you don't have homework, you do nothing else, just talk to everybody. Everybody gets 15 minutes to talk. And then you can come back and get another 15 minutes. So it becomes, again, more democratic. Everybody's feelings are heard. And even the child who has less confidence can develop confidence in it. So you can be creative in how to do that.
Yeah, I think you already have given answer to the next question. How can I give my full attention to the most talkative child, especially when we are in a rush?
Yes. Everybody takes turns, and sometimes the pen thing works. The person who holds the pen can speak, and then when that's done, you pass the pen on, and only the other person who holds his pen will speak. So that will help the person who jumps in.
That's a good one, Auntie. Thank you so much.